A season ago, Texas Tech rewrote the book on what it meant to defend and shut down Big 12 programs like BYU. Do the Cougars have the guys that can counter what Texas Tech threw at them a season ago? I think so.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch. Coming up on today's show, we're talking BYU defensive tackles. The future of the position looks very, very bright. I also think that they actually have quality depth at the position for the first time in quite some time. We'll talk about both of those topics a little later on. But I want to dive right in on today's show and say that BYU, on paper, has the best tandem of defensive tackles in the Big 12 Conference. Now, that may sound controversial to some of you out there, and I understand why, but they said it themselves. I think that BYU with Keanu, Tanuvasa, and Justin Kirkland combining up front for BYU on the interior of that defensive line, they have the guys that they need to compete with the likes of Texas Tech. And in fact, they said it themselves. Justin Kirkland told the media during spring ball when asked, he believes BYU absolutely, he and Keanu are the best tandem of hog mollies in the middle of that defensive line for BYU. And let's be very clear. If BYU truly wants to compete for Big 12 glory, winning a Big 12 championships, and even beyond that, winning the Big 12 conference title, and then playing in the college football playoff, you have to have a dominant defensive line, and that starts on the interior with teams being unable to move your interior defensive linemen. And having guys like Keanu Tanuvasa at 6'4", 300 pounds, and then Justin Kirkland, he's listed anywhere between 6'3", 340 to 350 pounds. I think he told the media he had slimmed down to a trim 330 pounds during spring ball. Those two guys, if you have 600 plus pounds of beef in the middle of your defensive line, that's going to give you a big opportunity to compete more favorably than you did a season ago against the likes of a Texas Tech. And for comparison's sake, last year, Texas Tech's defensive line was just downright elite. David Bailey is now off as the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. Romello Height was taken early on. Lee Hunter and Skylar Gill-Howard were the interior tandem that allowed those two on the edges, speaking of Height and David Bailey, just to feast on opposing teams. Well, Lee Hunter, 6'4", 325 pounds, is a nose tackle. He is now with the Carolina Panthers. And Skylar Gill-Howard, 6'1", 290, is now with the Detroit Lions. And those two combined to be the force in the middle that allowed the Texas Tech defensive line to just absolutely clobber opposing teams. I believe BYU, with Keanu Tanuvasa now playing in more of his favored 3/4 technique defensive tackle role, alongside a guy like Justin Kirkland, who just relishes playing nose tackle and taking on centers and guards and just eating up blocks. That tandem of guys, if they are as good as advertised, BYU's defensive line is going to take another step forward, if not multiple steps forward this season, and could be the best, I truly believe, in the Big 12 Conference. And that's saying something, because there's a lot of programs out there that aspire to have downright dominant trench play. One of them is BYU's arch rival, Utah. And there are major question marks about Utah, for example, because if you didn't see it, and our good friend JT Wistersill has talked about this a lot on his show, Utah, unlike BYU, has to replace all 5 starting offensive linemen and all 4 starting defensive linemen. Talk about an ordeal that Utah's going to have to navigate. And conversely, BYU returns the vast majority of their guys along this defensive front. I don't think was too bad a season ago, but needs Justin Kirkland and Keanu Tanuvasa to really emerge and become a dominant tandem. And if they do as I forecast, they forecast themselves, and what many hope BYU can do under new defensive coordinator Kelly Poppinga, and obviously being mentored by a former NFL guy himself in Sione Po'uha, BYU has pinned a lot of their hopes for a dominant defense on being able to shut down opposing rushing attacks and doing it with 4 guys on the defensive line. That's the way that Texas Tech did it. And I said it back when BYU had dominated in the Big 12 title game. I said Kalani Sitake and the BYU Cougars need to just look across the field at that Texas Tech team and say, that's how we need to go about building our program. And everything that Kalani has done during his time at BYU has been building up to having a defensive line this caliber that I believe they're going to have this coming season. it's been a long time coming, and it's really been a long road to get here because there have been a lot of false starts, a lot of defensive linemen that you would have liked to have thought, hey, they're going to be better than they actually were. But essentially since that 2020 season when Kairos Tonga, Zach Daw, and those guys graduated from the program, it's been the wilderness, for lack of a better term, for BYU's interior defensive line play. And the hope is now they have got, as I like to call them, the hosses, not horses, the hosses, the big hog mollies, whatever you want to call them, that they can truly go out there, dominate the opposition at the point of attack, that is in the line, at the line of scrimmage, push their guys back into the backfield, make some plays from time to time, and just go out there and wreck shop. I believe that Keanu Tanuvasa, the biggest thing that he struggled with last year is when he was called upon to play that nose tackle position, it's not his favorite position. It actually works against his strengths, which are as a pass rushing defensive tackle. He is a better guy to play more in space. I know that playing in space at a defensive tackle spot is a relative term because you're playing what they call the phone book area of the field. But he is much better when going against single team situations. And that's what a guy like Justin Kirkland relishes, is taking on the double and triple teams. That'll free up a guy like Keanu Tanuvasa and the defensive ends for BYU to go and have one-on-ones and, in theory, should win those routinely and make plays in the backfield. So I believe that these two guys, if they are as they believe they are, the best defensive tackle tandem in the Big 12 this coming season, BYU's defense is going to be something to watch because there's a ton of veteran leadership back at linebacker, in the secondary, and also up front on this defensive line. And that has got to carry the day. That has got to allow a guy like Kelly Poppinga to be able to settle in as BYU's defensive coordinator. He's obviously going to have his ideas and he's going to imprint some things that he wants to see implemented in BYU's defense, but he doesn't need to change a lot. Jay Hill, Kalani Sitake, Gary Anderson, the brain trust that built this defense from the ground up since the day that Jay Hill arrived in Provo, there's not a lot to alter about it. It doesn't need a wholesale change. It just needs some fine-tuning, some tweaking, as it were. And so long as you don't completely bungle it, yeah, you're going to be pretty darn elite on this defensive front, and it's going to be led by Kirkland and Tanuvasa in the middle. The good news is, beyond those two, the question routinely for BYU, especially at defensive line, is, okay, you may have one, two, maybe three guys that can truly hold up. And at the level BYU is playing at the Power 4 level, you need to go 4, 5, or 6 guys deep. The good news is I think Sione Po'uha and the BYU Cougars have finally built that adequate depth. Today's show brought to you by Rocket Money. If you've ever opened your bank account and saw, hey, where did all my money go? Well, you're not alone. Keeping track of your subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast, and that is where Rocket Money comes in. It helps you take control of your finances all in one place. It tracks your subscriptions in one spot, and it actually can help you cancel the ones you don't need with just a few taps. The best part is it automatically categorizes your spending, so you actually can see where your money is going. You can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of all of your upcoming bills. It makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances day to day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can actually grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. If you have not signed up for the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club, I would highly encourage you guys to do just that. Get the inside access that you crave when it comes to all things BYU football and basketball. Get access to audio ad-free episodes. Get access to Locked On merch and a bevy of other features out there. Our Discord server access, which is exclusive to Everydayer Club members. Go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com. That's lockedoncougars.supercast.com, or click the link in the show notes below. All right, so BYU has two guys in the middle of the defensive line that are the starters we've already discussed. In the case of Keanu Tanuvasa and Justin Kirkland, they're expected to be the leading guys on the defensive line for BYU this fall. But the nice part is they will have the capability, speaking of BYU, to put multiple guys on the field that can hold up better than I think at any point, honestly, in the 10 plus years Kalani Sitake has been coaching at BYU. It has felt for a long time that the defensive line has been fairly paper thin. You get past maybe that first unit and suddenly you're like, okay, is that guy really gonna be able to hold up? the concerted effort they have made in the past 3 to 4 years at building up the depth, I think it's going to come to bear this fall. And the three guys you need to know about in particular, in my opinion, that are going to fill those depth pieces are Anisi Purcell, who is a redshirt senior this year, a transfer from Southern Utah, who dealt with some injury concerns during his time last year for BYU, but has all the skill, I think, to be a difference maker and spell guys like Keanu Tanuvasa and or Justin Kirkland when need be. And he's 6'3", 305 pounds. He also has the requisite height and weight you want for your defensive lineman. The other guy to know, and I think he's more going to play the role that Keanu Tanuvasa plays, where he's more of a pass rush specialist and capable of making plays in the backfield, is a guy who's being slotted in from the outside, and that's Villiami Po'uha. Now, his dad, obviously, Sione, is BYU's defensive line coach and associate head coach, but doesn't mean that Villi is any less talented. He's a little undersized, 6'3", 278, but the hope is by the time fall camp rolls around, he's pushing 300 pounds. He has like the green light to eat anything and everything he wants at this point to build up that depth. And considering his dad had a very long and illustrious career in the NFL and obviously was a sensation in his own right, speaking of Sione, Villi's bloodlines indicate that I think his best days are ahead of him. He's only a junior, so he's got 2 seasons to go in a Cougar uniform. And the hope is that he will fit better on the interior than maybe he did as an edge player for BYU. And then the third name I want to mention, he was a revelation last year because he was undersized himself, and he's still obviously working on adding the weight. But his dimensions forecast a guy that I think is going to be downright dominant in the future, and that's Ulavai or Vai Fetuli. At 6'4", 295 pounds, the product of La Abra High School, formerly actually out of Hawaii. Vai, man, he played, I think, better than anybody could have expected as a true freshman a season ago. He's now a redshirt freshman. They were able to keep his redshirt intact from last year. And the fact that he's got as many as 4 seasons remaining and as well as he played a season ago, that is a guy that when Keanu Tanuvasa, Anisi Purcell, and Justin Kirkland, who are all redshirt seniors this year, move on from this football program, I think you can just immediately move his name right up to being a starter at defensive tackle for the BYU Cougars. That is how high I and the BYU staff are on Vai Fetuli. He has got everything within him. He's 6'4", as I mentioned. He's got an expansive frame. He carries 280 plus pounds like very few people can. And that means that he can probably push 300 plus pounds and can be the prototype defensive lineman BYU wants to have in this defense. And need to be a huge, big, like fat guy. And I mean that fat term in the best way possible. He can be trim, he can be fit, and he can be an absolute rock in the middle of this defense. And that's the way that I see Vai Fetuli. He was a guest on this very podcast last fall when he started Breakout, and we had a great chat. He's got an effervescent personality, but you also can tell he is dedicated to his craft and becoming the best defensive lineman he possibly can be. And I think that trio, Villiami Po'uha, Anisi Purcell, and Vai Fetuli, they're going to be the triumvirate that is expected to come in and not let things slide if and when Keanu Tanuvasa or Justin Kirkland need a blow. And that I think portends that BYU, as I mentioned, is going to have the best depth at defensive tackle that I can remember in Kalani Sitake's run as BYU head coach. Maybe that 2020 squad had best depth even then, but it really was kind of that frontline unit that held up remarkably well. And beyond that, you had question marks. They, under Jay Hill, and now he's off to Michigan, obviously, but BYU's defensive staff made it a point of emphasis to build up depth in the trenches. They knew what Utah had built its rep on, and that was being absolutely ferocious and dominant in trench warfare on the football field. And they want to get back to that, and they want that to be a hallmark of Kalani Sitake's program. And I thought last year they made major strides towards that, but I think with the seasoning, the overall development of these players in this system, this is the year or the years to come are the years that we're really going to see that concerted effort pay off in spades. And I just mentioned only the 5 guys that I think are going to make up the rotation at defensive tackle this fall. The nice part is there are a handful more that we're going to talk about here in a moment that if they take the same kind of career arc that Vai Fetuli has taken so far, yeah, the future of this position is in very, very good hands for the BYU football program. And that should engender a lot of confidence for a guy like Kelly Poppinga to be like, all right, my defensive tackles, they're capable now of doing what we want them to do, and that is shutting down the opposing rush attack. And that will allow his defensive ends to come off the edge more ferociously to wreak havoc in the backfield. It allows the linebackers to roam more freely to make plays sideline to sideline, also in the backfield. And it also lets the defensive backs feel like, hey, I am capable of doing what I need to do on the back end. I can turn my back, and I know that's probably a bad term, but they're capable of doing their job, whether it's in man coverage or dropping deep in their zone, and understanding they're not going to be asked to make a touchdown saving tackle very often because the guys up in front of them, that front seven, they're going to accomplish their job more often than not. Yeah, every so often that things may break down. You may get out of position one or two times, and then you have to make the play. But more often than not, I think the depth here that BYU went about with like I said, a very pointed emphasis in trying to build it up. Yeah, it's going to pay off dividends this year, and they need it to, because if BYU truly wants to be a dominant program in the Big 12 and truly compete for national championships and make the college football playoff and really kind of just be the BYU that I think you or I want them to be, you need this defensive line to be as good as it possibly can be. And also with that, as deep as it possibly can be. Yeah, they're going to be guys who may be a little miffed in terms of, hey, they probably want more reps on the field. But in this day and age of college football, it's more about the guys you have versus the guys you don't. And BYU, they've got guys. They've got, I call them dudes. And they're raring to go. And I hope that Fetuli, Anisi Purcell, and or Villiami Po'uha make it difficult on BYU's coaches. I hope that they push Justin Kirkland and or Keanu Tanuvasa for starting reps. And if they're capable of holding up and being the better player on the field, Kalani Sitake has been very blunt in the past that you have to earn your position every single day you're on the practice field. Nothing is given or assumed in the BYU football program. You have to earn it, and you have to prove that on the practice field to get the right to do it on the actual gridiron come game day. And this five-man unit, I think, of the top end of this defensive tackle group, they're going to absolutely push one another, but that iron sharpens iron concept is going to, I think, really help them be as good as we all hope they can be this fall. All right, coming up next, finish up this deep dive on BYU's defensive tackles, and I talked about it. There are 4 or 5 more names you need to know about and file away for future reference, and maybe 1 or 2 of them, like Fetuli, emerge this fall. And if they do, that's actually really good news for BYU. Thank you once again for being here on Locked On Cougars. We're very proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have not subscribed, rated, and reviewed and shared the show with your family and friends, please do so. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, I'm going to point to it right here. There's a little thumbs up icon right there. All you got to do is click it. Also, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon if you want to get updates when new shows drop. All of that to say thank you for all of your support of this podcast. We've got an incredible audience, and I talk about all the time with people who want to know why BYU fans respond so well in the media is because you guys love your team. You are absolute diehards. So thank you, truthfully, for all your support of this podcast, but more importantly, your support of the BYU Cougars. All right, let's finish up today's show talking about the future at defensive tackle for BYU. And on the roster this year, BYU's got more bodies at defensive tackle than I can remember in many, many moons. And there are 4 names of guys we have not talked about today, but all of them are guys that figure to be developmental guys this fall, but much like we've talked about, Fetuli last year was thought maybe it's going to take him a season to really kind of emerge and become the guy that we wanted to be. Well, no, he hit the ground running and I think forced his way onto the field. Now, some injury concerns helped get that into place for him as well, but he responded well and became, I thought, the future of the defensive tackle position for BYU. And the 4 names we're going to talk about here, I think all 4 of them should think that, hey, I'm this year's Fetuli. So the first I want to talk about is Nehemiah Kolone. He is a freshman enrollee from Stillwater, Oklahoma. He played at Stillwater High School. That is obviously where Oklahoma State is from. But at 6'4", 268 pounds, he's still a little on the skinny side, but that does not take away that he's got a skill set I think could benefit him, much like I did Fetuli last year, where while he's undersized, his play on the field shows that this is a kid that's not overwhelmed by the moment. Now, he's going to have to show that more than he did in spring camp, because obviously when training camp rolls around come late July, early August, you got a month, and then it's really time to get it going. And playing at the Big 12 level is no joke. So keep an eye on Nehemiah Kolone. I think he's got all that skill set. The other one I'm especially excited for, because he has spent a year in the system already, is Kelepi Latu-Finau. Now at 6'5", 285 pounds, he is a prototypical size, much like Kolone, who's 6'4", 268, and Fetuli is 6'4", 285. You get a sense of what BYU's recruiting. Oh, yeah, they want tall, maybe not necessarily 330-pound guys, but guys who are going to tip the scales in time at 300-plus pounds, but have the height to get the arm up into the passing lanes. Yeah, that's what they like. And I think a guy like Kelepi, he has got that ability. Now, his brother obviously plays on the offensive line and is making noise, or was making noise at one point at tackle last year during the season as a true freshman. But Kelepi's time is coming. And the hope is that maybe this fall you start to hear his name emerge more and more. Maybe you see him get some time here and there in games that BYU has well in hand. But I really like his size. I like his demeanor. I like the overall skill set he possesses, because when BYU won his recruitment and got his commitment, I was super excited. He comes via Oakland, California, and Alameda High School. And I think that if he continues on the track that he, Fetuli, Nehemiah Kolone, and the like are on, yeah, in time, this defensive tackle unit is going to be tall, it's going to be broad, and is going to be a force to be reckoned with, because a lot of these young guys still obviously need to hone their craft, but they've got some veterans in front of them, and they have time on their side to develop into the best versions of themselves. The third name to know, David Tangilanu, who is another defensive tackle guy out of California, comes from East Palo Alto High School, went to Menlo Atherton High School, and he is a return missionary. He went on a mission right out of high school and kind of was out of sight, out of mind for a lot of Cougar fans probably, but does not take away that this guy was a really, really awesome high school prospect that BYU was excited to grab. Just like Kelepi Latu-Finau, 6'5", 285. I'm telling you, there's a theme here. Tall, not necessarily the thickest right now, but yeah, you give him a year or two working with Ryan Phillips and this BYU strength staff. These are dudes who are going to carry 300, 310, 320 pounds, maybe in some cases, and are going to look trim. They're going to look muscular, and they're going to look like absolute leviathans out there. That is what the hope is. And I think David this year, coming home off of a mission, trying to get rid of mission rust and the like, yeah, he could probably be tabbed as a redshirt candidate, but opportunity exists everywhere for these BYU players. And Kalani Sitake, I love the way that he goes about expressing that to his players. He says, hey, if you're good enough and you force us to play you, we've got no problem doing that. And that's the right mentality to have for him as a head coach. And that brings me to the final name on this list, and that's Maverick McManus. Now, at 6'5", 270, he's a little on the lighter side, but he's also a redshirt candidate from last year. And at the height and weight he's at, he is a guy that I think could use some time, obviously, to bulk up. But if a guy like Villiami Po'uha can play at 278 pounds, that means that McManus also can probably make plays in certain circumstances. You may go a little lighter in terms of pass rush situations. Remember, you go with 3 down defensive linemen, and you maybe want a little bit of a bigger threat at pass rush with the defensive tackles. Well, you may go with a lighter guy. And that could be McManus, or could be any one of these guys on the field. I think that on that front, if you go to the 3-man front, which BYU has utilized with Jay Hill and other defensive coaches at times, they may roll with Keanu Tanuvasa in the middle in those passing downs, but on rundowns, you put a guy like Justin Kirkland out there. But all of these guys come in different shapes and sizes. The nice part is they all kind of fit the mold of what BYU wants, and that's tall, as I said, muscular, broad defensive linemen who are ferocious at the point of attack. And if this unit continues to develop at the pace it's going, it's going to be a really, really fun season and seasons ahead to watch these guys morph into, I think, what BYU hopes they are. And that is the best defensive line, defensive tackles in this circumstance in particular that BYU can get. And I hope that it plays out that way, because I really do think that there is depth, there's talent. BYU made it a priority to get better in the trenches overall, and it looks like they have nailed it on every front, it feels like, for this defensive tackle unit. Now, the final note I'll pass along here is We talk a lot about potential. We talked a lot about guys on paper and production that needs to emerge. Well, guess what? The time is now for them to use the PRPs and the workout periods they have now to bulk up, to train their bodies, train their skill set. But yeah, come August, it's go time. And the ultimate proof will be in the pudding. It's a phrase I love to use on this podcast because it's exactly what it is. We will see this defensive tackle unit become the best unit in the Big 12, at least at the top, with Justin Kirkland and or Keanu Tanuvasa, or we won't. Either they'll shine and show us that we were absolutely right and they were right in boasting about their prowess on the field, or they'll fall flat on their face. And unfortunately, we'll have to adjust accordingly our expectations. Adjust our expectations accordingly, excuse me. So it's going to be very, very fun to watch this unit, but I am bullish on the future of this defensive tackle position, and it starts with this season, but going forward, much like a lot of the units we'll talk about here on BYU's depth chart, they have done a really, really good job about building up what I would call power forward depth, and it's something that BYU has wanted for a long, long time, and it appears they very well have just that. All right, that'll do it for today's edition of the podcast. Fun to talk about these positions in depth. Hope you guys find them of value. If you have comments, questions, whatever you got, drop in the YouTube comments, reach out via social media. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like, and if you want more information or less, whatever it is. Always appreciate any and all feedback you guys give us. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Search out Locked On Cougars, or you can search me out individually. Jacob C. Hatch is the handle on that front. As always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not signed up already, join the Locked On Cougars Everyday Club by going to lockedoncougars.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes below. I'd love for you guys to be a part of this. Coming up tomorrow, another Fan Friday squad edition of the show. We had a great first run with it last week. We'll do another one tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. We'll have a lot of fun talking all things BYU basketball and football and whatever else comes up in the course of the conversation. And as always, thank you for your continued support. For those of you on video, we're going to send you over to the 24/7 National Locked On YouTube College channel for more great Locked On content there on YouTube. Or if you're listening on audio and want more college football coverage, check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. And until tomorrow, everybody, come back and be an everydayer with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.